All right, it is 1:10 on the nose. Welcome everyone. Get my screen popped up here and we'll get going. It's going to be a quick 50-minute trip through Jamboard for early literacy instruction. So if you can see it, can you just type in the chat, hey, I can see your screen, so I know that we don't have an issue here before I get going. Awesome, thank you, Kimberly. All right, so Jamboard for early literacy instruction, we're going to cover 3 areas. We're going to talk about phonological awareness, phonics, and decodables. And I have a little subtitle here called Getting Jammy with It. So I'm new to the Google Camps. My name is Lisa Curtis. I work at the Colton Joint Unified School District. I was a classroom teacher for 14 years. I spent a good 10 years of that teaching kindergarten and another 2 years teaching TK. And I taught 3rd grade for a couple of years. And I've been a curriculum program specialist with my district for the past 4 years. I am leading edge certified for both online and blended learning, as well as professional learning leader. I'm also a Seesaw ambassador, but this is my first time presenting with Google. And so I always tell people who ask what I do that I'm a jack of all trades and a master of some. In my job, I cover all curriculum areas because I work with elementary. But my passion and my love and all of the research that I do in my off time is all surrounding reading, because I have a real passion for helping kids learn to read and helping teachers learn how to teach kids how to read. I do have a Wakelet available, and I can drop that link for you in just a moment into the chat. We'll have all the resources, links to all of the Jamboards, as well as some videos and different instructional resources that you can use to plan out your own lessons. And I use this quote today as my inspiration, that once you learn to read, you will be forever free. And that's from Frederick Douglass. That is why I'm so passionate, because I do feel like reading is one of the great wall breakers in our society, that students who can't read really do struggle even having a successful life. And I want to make sure that we get all of our kids reading so that they all have opportunity in our society. So today's session in Jamboard, we're going to learn how you can use it electronically to teach, because I know we're in a wobbly situation right now where we are hopeful that we're all going back, but we never know what's going to happen with this virus. So I wanted to make sure that people had tools to use to help them should we need to go back into a distance learning situation. So we'll cover phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics, and then reading connected text or decodables. So our first topic is phonological and phonemic awareness, and that's when we're hearing, distinguishing, and manipulating those sounds that are making up our English language. Before I get into the strategy, I titled the slide, "What's up with the phones?" Because there's phonological and phonemic awareness, and oftentimes teachers will get the 2 terms confused. So phonological awareness is really that umbrella term, and phonemic awareness nudges itself under that umbrella. But phonological awareness includes the following skills: rhyming, syllables, onset rhyme, and phonemic awareness, which is the most advanced level of phonological awareness. And so I want to show you what you can do in Jamboard. Oh, some people can't see the slides. You can see my dog on the screen? Dear. All right, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're looking at the right thing. I don't know why it switched over to desktop too. That's weird. All right, are we good now? Thank you, I can see someone nodding, perfect. Thank you, Jenny. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this umbrella term again, just so you can see I got my umbrella up here. And so we're going to go into both phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. And these are some skills that our students need to develop in order to connect our speech to the print that they see in text. So I want to show you some skills or some Jamboards that you can use to help develop this. Starting with phonological and phonemic awareness. So I'm going to go into my Jamboard here. I'm going to get out of here. And you should see this same Jamboard. All right, so we're going to start with words. So what we'll find as students are coming into us is that they will need to be able to segment our speech into words, because as we're speaking, our speech is coming out in a long stream. The words become articulated together. And so the first thing that we want to do is teach our students how to segment our stream of speech into individual words. And this is a way that we can do this using a digital manipulative, basically, that you could broadcast through your Zoom meeting or your WebEx or your Google Meet, so that students can see, have a visual of the words in sentences. So I'm going to start with a sentence, my dog barks, and you would have the students repeat that sentence back to you, my dog barks, and they can put up a finger for each sentence, each word in the sentence, my dog barks, and you can pull down these manipulatives to show my dog, down, there we go, barks. My dog barks. Now you can have students go into the sentence and kind of work with it a little bit. You can ask them, okay, what was the first word in that sentence? What was the first word? My. What was the last word? Barks. What was the word in the middle? Dog. My dog barks. You can have the students say the sentence as you highlight each manipulative. My dog barks. So that's one way that you can start getting them to be able to hear individual words within sentences, because this isn't really a natural skill for our kids. We have to teach them that sentences are made of words. Once they have a good handle on that and they can identify individual words and sentences, we move into syllables. So segmenting sentences into words and working with syllables, these are skills that I would introduce pre-K, TK, but you will have kindergartners who come to you who may not have these skills if they were not in a pre-K or TK program. So these are syllables. These are our syllable manipulatives. They're squares. And so you would do it just as you would in any other classroom, having kids clap syllables. So we can clap syllables in the word doghouse, doghouse, and then pull down the manipulatives, dog, house, doghouse. So you can have the student, you can ask them, what was the first syllable that you heard? Dog. What was the last syllable you heard? House. As they're become really good at this, then you can start having them delete syllables. Say doghouse without dog, what do you have left? House. Say doghouse without house, what's left? Dog. This is getting them ready to start working with individual sounds within words. Let's do a couple of more just so you can see. The reason why I started with the word doghouse is because when we start with syllables, to avoid confusion, it's often best to start with compound words. Compound words have identifiable syllables and they're individual words, so kids won't get as confused if you begin with the compound words and then segment them and take them into words that are not compound words. So let's do a word that's not a compound word. Let's do dinosaur. So let's clap dinosaur together. Dinosaur. And we can pull down our manipulatives. Dinosaur. And what's nice about this is you can broadcast this to your students over Zoom, or you can actually force a copy and give them the link, and they can have this as their own workspace. So even if you find yourself in a classroom situation where kids might not have manipulatives to use, they could use their iPads if they have iPads, they can use their Chromebooks if they have Chromebooks, to use these types of digital manipulatives as well. Once our kids get a handle on their syllables, we're ready to move them into onset rhymes. So an onset is the beginning consonant sound of a word, and the rhyme is the vowel in the word and anything that follows after it. So for example, if I had the word sat, the onset would be s, and the rhyme would be at, sat. You can also have them do deletion with this. You can have them delete either the onset or the rhyme. So you can have them say sat without s, and they could say that what's left is at. You could have them change out the onset. So once they're good at identifying onset and rhyme, and they're good at deleting onset and rhyme, then you can start adding in some manipulation of the onset. So you could say something like, say, so I'll take these back up for you so we can do it all together. Say sat, sat. The onset is s, the rhyme is at, sat. Now say sat, but instead of s, say p. What would you have? P, at, pat. And what this does for our students is it gets them to become confident in being able to substitute these sounds. And it teaches them that when the sound changes, the word changes. And this is really important. This is also great for when you need kids to be able to hear and create rhyming words, because it all comes from this rhyme portion of the word itself. So if kids can manipulate the onset, then they can create rhyming words. So if we started with the word at, well, and it's a rhyme because it doesn't have a consonant at the beginning. And now we're going to start adding in some of our onsets. So add to at. What word do you have? Mat. Change out the for s. What word do you get? Sat. Change out the s for What word do you get? Rat. And so not only are students getting an idea of onset and rhyme, which is going to lead them into phonemic awareness, but it's also helping them to develop that consciousness of rhyming words and how rhyming words are created using the sounds of our language. So once we have our kids really solid with onset rhyme, now we're really going to want to start working on individual phonemes. So the way that I like to do this is to use something called Tap It, Map It, Zap It. I'm using Elkanon boxes here. You can see my 3-box Elkanon box here. And we're using the round manipulatives this time. So I made circle manipulatives, and there are multiple colors to help kids distinguish them, not for any other purpose other than to make sure that kids understand that each of those is an individual sound. So in Tap It, Map It, Zap It, what you're going to do is you're going to have students repeat a word that you say. They're going to tap out the individual sounds or phonemes using their fingers. And then they're going to drag down the manipulatives to match the number of phonemes. So this is how it would work. We're going to use the word dig, say the word dig, and we're going to tap it out on our fingers, tap the word dig, d-ig. So I usually go pinky to thumb, but you could also start with pointer, d-ig. And then we're going to map it. And when I say map it, that means that we're going to drag down our individual sound manipulatives into each box. And each box is going to represent one sound. So if the word is dig, the first sound is d, I, g, d, ig. And the last part of this exercise is zap it. To zap it, students will either run their cursor, or you can run your cursor under it. If you want to be a little fancier, you can grab the laser and drag under it. So if the sounds are d, I, g, then the word is dig. And that's the zap it part. In a classroom, you would do this using manipulatives, and you could use any manipulatives you have, whether they're cubes or little circles, or the math manipulatives that are the double-sided counters. You could use those as well. And the zap it would be the students either running their finger under or clearing the board as they're saying the word. Let's go back to my corner here. Okay, let's do another example with a little bit longer word. So this word has a few more phonemes. So I have a 4-box Elkanon box there. And the word is smell, smell. Say smell, tap smell. Smell. Let's map it. smell. So you can see each individual sound in the word gets its own box and its own counter. And what this is doing for our students is it's helping them to visualize the sounds in the words before they're actually connecting letters to the phonemes. We'll do that in the next segment when we talk a little bit about phonics. And then you can do this with even longer words. Say the word is market, market. And you could actually even have them clap out the syllables first. Market, what's the first syllable? Mar, let's tap mar. R. R. Market. The second syllable was ket. Let's tap that out. K, et. Market. So as students grow their skills, you're going to want to increase the number of phonemes in the word. I don't recommend going beyond 2 syllables. That would be a little bit too much. And obviously for our littles, we really want to stick to our little 1-syllable words, our CVC words. That's where we're going to get our start to help them understand that our words are made up of individual sounds and that we can divide that word into sounds. You can also do some substituting here. Let's go ahead and go back to a shorter Elkin box. So you can also do some substitution work here. So you're going to want to have your manipulatives lined up like this. And when you do your substitution, you'll start by segmenting out a word. So let's go to the word cap. K, a, p, a. And now we can start doing some work with our students, having them substitute out some of the individual sounds and phonemes within the word. So if I have the word k, a, p, cap, if I want to substitute or take out the k and make it say then I could do something like this. I'm going to change my word cap, but instead of saying k, I'm going to say Out goes k. In comes app. What word? Rap. You can substitute at the end as well. So if we have rap, app, and we want it to say ram, we can say, I want to say the word rap, but instead of saying p, say Out goes p. In comes ram. And then again, you can substitute here in the middle. So if I have ram, and I want to do some substitution, I can maybe say, I want to say the word ram, but instead of saying I want to say Out goes a, in comes and what word do we have now? Rum. So you can have them substitute in the beginning, middle, and end as well. So you can see as we started, we had a really simple concept of I'm going to have a sentence or a phrase, and I want to break it down into individual words. As students become really great at that, now I want to take individual words and break them into their syllables. Once they're pretty good with syllables, we're going to take those individual words now and break them down into their onset and rhyme. And then once they're really good with onset and rhyme, we're going to take it into phonemes. The recommendations based on the most recent research is that we are trying to get our kids into this basic level, not substitution and deletion and addition, but just being able to hear the individual sounds and words, to tap them out and break them apart, or to blend them back together. So that blending and segmenting portion we're really looking to have that happen by the middle of kindergarten, because that's where the sweet spot really lies in making that transition from the phonemes to phonics. So they need to be able to blend and segment in order to be able to understand how it works when we're looking at print. So that's our phonological awareness portion. And we will go into the next stage would be phonics. So once we've got our kids being able to hear and manipulate those sounds and words, now we want to teach them the connections between the phonemes or speech sounds in our language and the letter combinations or graphemes that we use to represent them in print. And this is the magic of reading for many kids. You will find that there are kids in your class. I've had kids come to me in kindergarten reading, but I've also had kids who just needed a little nudge and they got going. But then there are those kids who are really, really struggling. And so we need to make sure that they understand that our words are made of sounds and that those sounds can be represented by letters and letter combinations, and that's phonics. So that's our connection between spoken language and written language. And I always say that we go from speech to print. The oral language came first, and then we tagged in a way to write it down later on, only about 5,000 years ago, which was not a long time. If we give them their solid automatic phonics skills, that really does help them read unknown words independently. And we start with our explicit direct phonics instruction. And we want to have effective phonics strategies. So strategies that allow students to match those phonemes or speech sounds to the written representations, and strategies that let students do some of the manipulations themselves of sounds, letters, and words. What I found is in a lot of programs, for example, Wonders, our district is a Wonders district, the person doing most of the manipulating of the letters and sounds is the teacher. They're up in front with the pocket chart and the letters, and they're doing the manipulations, and kids need to be doing those manipulations as well. So we can use Jamboard for this as well. So if you are in your digital learning and your distance learning, then you might need to broadcast, but you might also have kids go in and do this themselves. So this is what we call a Phoneme Graphing Map. We use similar manipulatives, they're little circles, but we have an extra box here. And the reason why we have an extra box here, or an extra row of boxes here, is because we're going to have kids now start to make those connections to letters and letter combinations that we use to write words down. And so the way that this works is it's similar to Tap It, Map It, Zap It, except that we're going to add on the component of having the letters written into boxes. So if we were going to do this with a shorter word like the word sip, we would have the students say the word sip. Let's tap the word sip. Sip. Let's graph the word sip. And now we're going to map the word sip. So the first sound we heard in sip was S. What letter makes the sound S? Write it down. I. The next sound is I. What letter makes the I sound? I. Write it down. Sip. The last sound was P. What letter makes the P sound? P. Write that letter down. Sip. What word did I write? Sip. Let's write the word here. Sip. Sip. Read the word. Sip. So what we're doing with this is we're making a very, very explicit connection to the students between the sounds that they're hearing in a word and the letters that we're using to write the word down. And then how do we read the word when we see it in print? So this is just one way that we can help our students make these connections in order to become fluent decoders. Now, I am not saying that all we will ever do in kindergarten and first grade and TK, and especially not TK because we're really catching them at the beginning. We really want to hit a lot of phonological awareness for our TKs. And then in kindergarten, that's where we're really going to start building in that phonics component. I am never going to say that that's all that we do, because that's not all that reading is. Reading is a combination of our oral language comprehension skills and our ability to read words. So the strategies that I'm teaching here are the word reading ability strategies. And then our oral language, you're going to want to develop using read alouds, really in-depth conversations with students, upping that classroom language to make sure that we're using unusual words with our kids, that they get exposed to all of the wonderful variety that our English language really provides for them. We'll do one more example with phoneme graphing mapping, and we'll do the word cape, because I know when we get into first grade, we start working with vowel teams and the vowel consonant silent E pattern. And I want to show you how that looks in the phoneme graphing mapping, because it's not exactly one box per letter once we get into words that have vowel teams and vowel consonant E combinations. So we'll go ahead and do the word cape. Cape, say the word cape. Cape, tap the word cape. Ape, cape. Map the word cape. Let me get my pointer here. Ape, ape, cape. Now we're going to map out the word using our phonemes. So the first sound that we heard in cape was k. This one's tricky. It's going to start with a C, because C makes the k sound in cape. Our middle sound was A. That's made with an A. And then we have our final sound, p, p, p. And this one's going to be special because this is a long A sound. The A is saying its own name, A. So I'm going to use a P and an E at the end of the word cape. But this E is not making any sound at all. Its job is to make sure that the A is saying the A, long A sound, A. Ape, cape. And then we would rewrite the word underneath. And have the students read the word cape. So our silent E's, we write in the same box because they don't have a sound. So the box represents a sound in our language. And so we want to cross out that E to show that it's not making a sound. And this arrow is just the indication that this E's job in the word is to have this A make the long A sound. So that's one of the patterns that we need to worry about. The other one would be a vowel team, and it's very similar. So if we had the word meat, like as in I had a piece of meat for dinner last night, meat, we would have them tap the word meat, map it out, E, t. And then when we wrote it in, the vowel team would exist in one box because it's only making one sound in the word. So that's one of the places where kids can get confused as they're beginning to learn to read, is that not every letter in a word makes its own sound. So as we're teaching them these patterns, we really want to make sure that it's explicit that this EA is not saying E and A, it's just saying the long E sound that we hear in the word meat. So as we're working with phonics, then we're going to want to build in some additional work through word sorts. So word sorts are a really nice way for students to get familiar with letter patterns in our words, spelling patterns that we have, phonics patterns that we have in our words. So I have a word sort here. And it's a click and drag. So you can actually pair students up. You can share this a link into your Zoom or your WebEx or your Google Meet, and you can tell students, you can put them even into breakout rooms if your district allows it. And you can tell students, all right, Carlos and Juan, you two are going to work on slide 1, and Jim and Janie, I want you guys to work on slide 2, and so on and so forth. You can have them work in small groups or pairs. and then they're just going to sort. And this is what we call a closed sort, because the students don't have to make their own categories. We've given them the categories. So their job is going to be to click and drag these words into their appropriate categories together. And yeah, I'm going to put the bit.lys all back up for you. And we don't want to start them off doing this on their own. You would probably do several of these together as a class before you have them go in on their own. And then they can take turns reading the words to each other. And that's another way that they can do some practice. So what I'll do right now is I'm going to go ahead and go back, and I'm going to grab some of these links for y'all. So let me do this. Let me give you this link so that you'll have the whole presentation, which I should have done at the beginning, but didn't do, which is my fault. So that's the link to the entire presentation, and everything that you see linked here from the Wakelet all the way through is going to be linked in the presentation. So all of these bit.lys that you see underneath the example are actually forced copies. So you don't have to worry about moving things around or changing things. In fact, you are welcome to make as many copies of these as you need and change them as you like to use them with your own students. So let's see. All right, so we've got some phonological and phonemic awareness strategies. We've got some phonic strategies. And then the last thing that we have is we're going to put it all together using some decodable text. So when we talk about decodable text, there's lots of different types of text that we use with our early readers. And decodable text is just one of them. I don't ever want anyone to get the idea that the only thing that our kids will ever hold in their hands is a decodable text, because that isn't realistic. And it does not give them the full range and spectrum of what's available to them in their reading. But when we talk about decodable text, it's for a purpose, and its purpose is to practice the skills that our students are learning in our phonics lessons. Because what we'll find often, what I've found with my own students when I was in the classroom, was that I would have kids who could come up to my pocket chart and they could decode words for me just fine. But when they saw them in text, the skill kind of disappeared. They saw it as a skill that they used in a whole class demonstration and didn't realize how it transferred into text. And so what decodable text does for us is it really gives students a platform to practice those skills in connected text that looks like what they might see in the books that they have in their classroom. So again, this is providing our connected text practice. It's making it clear to those kids that they need to use the phonics skills that we're teaching in order to read, and it does help to build their confidence quite a bit. Sometimes to us as adults and experienced readers, decodables might seem boring because the stories can be stilted because of the way the limits that are placed, especially in the beginning when students don't have as many phonics skills. There's quite a few limits placed on what words can be used in these texts. And so at the beginning, they seem kind of manufactured, which they are. But the students don't realize that they're manufactured because their whole focus is trying to lift those words off the page using the phonics skills that we've taught them. And so you'll see as students start reading the decodables and they're doing it on their own, it really kind of lights them up to be able to read. So in Jamboard, what I would do is taking a quick screenshot of some decodable text. And in my Wakelet, there is a link to West Virginia Phonics. That's where I took this from. And then the strategy that you're going to use is called highlight, then read. So in our highlight, then read strategy, oops, wrong one. Let's not do that. Sorry, technical difficulties. All right, let's grab this one. There we go. So this is our decodable example. It's a short E. Example, obviously I wasn't using Shorty in any of the other ones, but this is what I grabbed from West Virginia Phonics. And they have about 3 passages per lesson. So you have a wide variety of text. And in this strategy, highlight then read, first the students will highlight all of the words that have the phonics pattern that you've been teaching. And for Jamboard, I recommend that you don't use the highlighter, even though that's an option, because it comes in really, really dark. And what happens, especially if you give this to students and they are the ones doing the highlighting, is that the more times they cross over the word with their highlighter tool, the darker it gets until the word becomes obscured. So I really recommend that you use the paintbrush option here. And then you can go through, and we're looking for, right now it's a short E. So any word that has the short E, we're going to highlight. And you can see this one has quite a few short E words, and that's the whole point, is to give them lots of practice with the skills that you've just taught them. I'm not going to go through the whole thing for time's sake, but they would highlight, or you would highlight for them, if you were doing this as a broadcasted example, every word that had the phonics pattern, so in this case, short E, and then you would read just the highlighted words. Ed, Ted, Ed, Ted, 10, let, ed, get, pet. So what we're doing there is we're just having kids isolate the words that have the pattern and getting them used to reading them. Once they've read them all, then you will go through and read the entire passage together. Ed and Ted were 10, so mom let Ed get a pet. And the students can read this either with you as a group online or in a small group if you're using small group. What I like about this is when we're using the highlight and read strategy, it's paper intensive because you have to have copies for everyone. And the idea is that they highlight, they read the words, then they read the passage, and then you give them a blank copy of the passage to have them practice reading without the highlight. Well, that can be expensive, but if you are using Jamboard, you hit the undo button a few times and they have their blank passage there for them to practice reading again. And it's usable over and over again, which is really nice. And again, this is something that you do in conjunction with your phonics lessons as a way for students to practice what they've learned using a connected text. And I will tell you, we have time for some questions now. And 50 minutes goes by really, really fast. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. All right, so the Wakelet, let me go ahead and grab the Wakelet. I'm gonna make this a little smaller so I can see my doc. There we go. So this is the Wakelet, and it's also linked in the presentation, so I can drop this link for you as well. So that's the link just to the Wakelet. In my Wakelet, I have some different resources here. So this Tolman's Hourglass, this is the concept that starts with words in a sentence, then syllables, onset rhyme, and down to individual phonemes. So she's just explaining in these 2 videos what her hourglass figure is and why you use that progression of skills. I have a Tap It, Map It, Zap It example, so you can see that happen again. This is the supplemental program that my district uses. Do we follow their scope and sequence? Yes, we do. We do for the most part, but not as much for phonemic awareness, because like I was saying, this is our supplemental for phonemic awareness. because we found that their phonemic awareness was a little jumbled and a lot lacking. And so we picked up this, it's called Heggerty Phonemic Awareness. And it's a really wonderful program that has all of the skills that students need to learn and done in a way that has a progression for them. And Equipped for Reading Success by David Kilpatrick is a good resource for reading instruction as well. And then some resources for the phonics. I have a video about Tap It, Map It, Graph It. The West Virginia phonics lessons that I talked about, and then phonics and spelling through Phoneme Graphing Mapping is a really nice resource that explains how to use those grids, the Phoneme Graphing Mapping grids, with our students. So who gets Heggerty? Heggerty can actually begin as early as pre-K. They do have a pre-K version. So there's a pre-K version, a kindergarten version, and a primary version. And so it can start as early as pre-K, and it's laid out so that it meets the needs of the students in that grade span or that grade level. If they haven't had anything at the beginning, like let's say that we have kids who you want to start, but you're a first grade teacher, you're going to use the primary book, and it's totally fine. They won't have missed a beat because they do still repeat those skills throughout. So it's just such a well laid out program. It takes a few minutes to learn, well, a little bit more than a few minutes, because there are like hand gestures and motions that are routinized throughout the system. But you can watch some videos on YouTube about Heggerty, and you can watch a teacher teaching some lessons so that you can see how the hand motions go. And then I also linked all of the Jamboards here so that you could have them, as well as if you aren't as familiar with building a Jamboard, I pulled out a video about how to create a Jamboard. And then if you're not familiar with screenshotting, this WikiHow goes through all of the devices that might screenshot so that you can take some screenshots, because that's how I got the backgrounds for some of these Jamboards, was actually using screenshots. So this Elkinen box, that's a screenshot that I set as a background. The same thing with, I love it when it does this, there we go. This Phoneme Graphing Mapping background is also a screenshot that I took so that I could just use it as a background. Okay. Do we have any other questions or anything else that you'd like to see? I can show you how I built the Jamboard if you'd like to see that. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and show you how I built the Jamboard out. So let's get a new window here. New tab. Windows is so Microsoft. Let's get a new tab here. And I actually have Jamboard saved, but if you don't, you can actually go into your drive and it will be here. So you can go to the new button. And then as my internet decides to slow down on me, there we go. Just go down to where it says more, and then you can get Jamboard from here. And it will pop you up with a blank Jamboard. The way that I did the manipulatives was I used the shape tool. So you can click on the shape and you can choose many different shapes. So for the rectangles, I started with a square and kind of drag them out. And then if you want to, you can just duplicate it, which makes it pretty easy. So you can duplicate as many as you need and then fill them with colors. So click on each shape, go to the paint can, and you can click the colors that you want. If you're doing them for a class, you can have up to 20 of these frames. So if you don't want to spend the time, which nobody does, going to each frame and recreating it, you can actually just use this little drop down arrow here to expand the frame bar And then you'll see the 3-dot menu in the corner, and you can click there and hit the duplicate button, and you can make up to 20 frames. Then you can also, like I said, you can also do the circles there to lay in your background. Go back here. Stuck. There we go. You can use the set background feature, and it has a few that are nice for different purposes, but you can actually pull an image. So if you have something in your camera or in your Google Drive that you want to use, you could use something from there as well. I don't have anything in my Google Drive, but you can pull in something from your own computer. I have some, just a random screenshot just to show you how it works. So you select it and then it will lay in. And what's nice about that is the kids can't touch that. That is the background. So it's not erasable, it's not movable. If you were to draw in Elkin boxes, they would be able to move the lines around. So for that type of thing, you really do want to use a screenshot so that kids can't mess with it. And then if you decide that you're done with this for whatever reason, if you hit clear frame, it will take away anything that you drew. To change the background back, you just need to go back and reset your background to white. See how we're doing. We have 4 minutes left. I just want to say thank you all for joining me. I'll put my email address here into the chat so that if you have any questions, you can send them on to me. Oops. Make sure it says everyone. I'm pretty responsive. I check my email several times a day. So happy to help you out with anything that you need. And thank you all for joining me in my adventure through Jamboard today.